Hi and welcome to the SQA Digital Exam presentation. My name's Dawn Roberts. I've been a teacher for 25 years. I spent 10 years initially in West Lothian as a primary school class teacher and then 12 years in Fife as a primary learning support teacher, including 5 years on the ICT assessment team, advising both primary and secondary schools on assistive technology to support their pupils. For the last 3 years, I've been a PT of support for learning in a secondary school in Fife, with responsibility for ensuring we meet the learning needs of all our pupils, including digital exams. I have with me today my son Innes, who's a secondary school pupil, not from my school. He has dyslexia and he's a young ambassador for Dyslexia Scotland.
Hi, I'm Innes. I am 17 years old. Just finished my S5 year at high school. I didn't get the opportunity to do my hires this year due to COVID, which I'm happy about. It means I didn't have to do my exams. I was identified as being dyslexic in P4, and since then I've developed my own strategies, including computers and help from friends and family to support my learning. I have been given assessment arrangements for my exams and stuff. And S4, my Nat 5s, I gained 6 A's and B's and a C for English. This allowed me to take 4 hires and an apprenticeship through the college.
This is an extract from the Call Scotland website which sums up the need for digital support in classes and assessment arrangements and exams. Through this presentation, I'm hoping that you'll have a better understanding of what assessment arrangements are available to young people, including our youngsters with dyslexia, how they're established, and what we can do as educators to make it easier for them to use assessment arrangements and digital papers.
I am a successful learner. I can read, but I'm slower than my friends and I misread things, especially under stress. I can write, but I prefer to type, as my handwriting is poor and my spelling is very embarrassing. I am a confident individual, but I do suffer from anxiety and do feel uncomfortable using human readers or scribes. I feel much better working independently using my own computer to help. I am clearly a responsible citizen and an effective contributor, having been appointed school captain this year at high school. One of my aims is to ensure equity, and another is to encourage pupils to have more of a voice, especially those with additional support needs.
What are digital papers? It's an assessment arrangement permitted by the SQA for a disabled pupil or people with identified additional support needs. It's an exact replica of the exam paper. It's usually in PDF format or sometimes in Word. It's available for almost every subject. It makes the text readable by a text reader, and the answer boxes are editable, so you can type your answers. Answers can also be dictated by speech-to-text software. There's lots of documents and policies that underpin the need for these digital papers and assessment arrangements. The Equality Act of 2010 requires that the SQA make reasonable adjustments where a candidate who is disabled within the meaning of the Act would be at a substantial disadvantage in comparison to a candidate who is not disabled. Being disabled under the Equality Act states that it's a physical or mental impairment that has substantial, more than minor or trivial, and long-term, 12 months or more, negative effect on your ability to do normal daily activities. The SQA say that assessment arrangements allow candidates who are disabled and or have been identified as having additional support needs appropriate arrangements to access the assessment without compromising its integrity. The Education Additional Support for Learning Scotland Act of 2009 provides the legal framework underpinning the system for supporting children and young people in their school education. It is important to remember that the Act automatically deems that all looked after children and young people have an additional support need unless deemed otherwise. The additional support needs identify physical, including medical or sensory, behavioural, mental health or learning difficulties, and all require an assessment arrangement. However, Innes says,
I certainly do not consider myself to be having a disability or have a mental impairment. However, as long as my education system and the exam system relies so much on my reading and writing skills, my dyslexia will affect my ability to demonstrate my knowledge and my understanding. Therefore, put me at a disadvantage. It is my right to have adjustments made to my curriculum and assessments to level the playing field.
I don't like the terminology either of disability or learning impairment, but however, it can be a disadvantage. This is an example of a digital paper. This is from the National Practical Woodwork last year, and Innes is going to demonstrate how he would use this, or how he did use this in his exams. The pupils can use the text-to-speech to hear the question if required. Then they could type their answer in the red box provided. They can then listen back to their answer just to check that's what they wanted to say. This, when the pupils come into the exams, it's already pre-decided whether they're going to have a spell checker or not. So if this was Innes's paper, he would have spell checker on. Sometimes pupils would want to draw a diagram to illustrate their answer, as in the practical woodwork. All digital paper candidates must be provided with a paper copy of the exam as well. And so in this case, Innes would listen to the question on the screen, and then he would put his answer, including the diagram, on the paper copy. Then both are submitted to the SQA for marking. This is an example of a higher PE paper, which Innes would have been doing this year, where the question paper is separate from the answer booklet. This is usually reserved for exams where there's kind of essay-style answers. In this case, the pupils would have a split screen with the questions on one side and the answer booklet on the other, and they would type as normal. All these papers are available on the SQA website, and Innes will demonstrate just now how to find them using Google.
So now I'll show you how to get past papers up. Just Google SQA, click your login, open the thing, and it comes straight to this. You click your subject you want to choose, so mine would be physical education. And your qualification. That brings you straight to all the past hires exams, and pick whichever one you want. And you've got your questions there. To answer it, you could use a Word document or other facility. To find digital papers where you can edit and put your answers in, you go to where you find your normal past papers and go down to this drop down menu here, digital question papers. Click on it and then click on this. And then click on your digital question past papers. 2019 last year's, and say we want to do woodwork, not 5 level, we do type in your woodwork. And you click on one of them. Right, so you type in woodwork, you click on this. Got it. And it comes up with this, and this is where you can add your names and start. If you want to answer the questions, just download it and it should be ready to work. This is the layout you would have when sitting a higher exam. So you do a split screen, or if you have the facilities you can have 2 screens, one with each. You get your questions on one side, and this is how you would answer it on the other side. Yet again, you use the red boxes to type your answer into, and you can use your reader to read the questions out as well.
Describe one short-term goal and one long-term goal for emotional factors.
That's what a higher exam would look like. This is a practical woodwork level nat 5 digital paper. These red boxes is where you can type. Like so. down to a question. Like so.
Describe how to set up the mortise machine to cut the mortise via the correct depth. You may use sketches to support your answer. You must give dimensions in your answer.
So to complete this question, I would draw a diagram. Drawing, that's crude now, but so when you've done that question, you can go on to your next question. And yes, and yet again listen to your question.
State 3 health and safety checks that should be carried out on the mortise machine before switching it on.
In this question, I would type the answers in.
So why use digital exams? If your reading skills impact on your ability to show your understanding in an exam situation, then your only option is a digital paper or a human reader and a scribe. Using a reader and a scribe is actually a very difficult skill to master. In an average secondary school, there will be very limited opportunity to practice this skill during class time. Human readers are also not permitted to be used because of the literacy element of the National 5 exam, but a digital reader is allowed.
I like digital papers because it means the exam answers will be more fairly compared to my peers, because I know that I have read the question accurately and my spelling has been corrected for me. By having assessment arrangements, I know I will sit my exam in a familiar place like the library with fewer pupils, which reduces my anxiety and can avoid the hype of everyone else's waiting in the main hall. Everyone, even not seeing all the rows of tables and chairs, helps me a lot.
These are some of the comments made by the pupils who have successfully engaged with digital papers in my school, some who had previously used human readers and scribes. So the history of digital papers. Call Scotland has hosts an annual digital paper seminars where folks like myself from all over Scotland can share their experiences directly with the SQA and other centres. They were first released in 2008, so they've been going quite a while now. Call Scotland monitor their progress and their usage. Previous to digital papers, 90% of Scottish schools requested human readers as an assessment arrangement to the SQA. Still in 2018, only 59% of Scottish schools requested digital papers at all. In 2019, there were 6,014 digital paper requests, but still 10,000 human reader requests. Why was that? There is a thought that some schools dual request assessment arrangements, so they may request a digital paper for a subject for a pupil, but then also request a reader just in case the pupil either changes their mind or the ICT fails. This is not required, as if there is a problem with the IT on the day, you are permitted to put in emergency assessment arrangements and inform the SQA afterwards. This would have been my 4th year providing digital papers during the SQA diet, and we have never had a problem with ICT.
There's not been a problem at my school either.
This graph shows the increase of digital paper requests since 2008. The dip in 2014 was the introduction of National 4s and 5s, replacing foundation and standard grades. National 4's equivalent to foundation now doesn't require an exam or official assessment arrangements because these levels are assessed in-house, and normal teaching strategies and supports are permitted. This trend is encouraging, but in 2018 there was still 41% of Scottish schools not requesting any digital papers.
So how are their dyslexic learners sitting their exam? I am glad not to be one of those schools.
So what happens in my school? We have a database with all pupils with additional support needs. The information from primary 7 pupils is gathered through the transition process throughout their primary 7 year. A registration system, CMIS, has all pupils with ASNs highlighted on the register, so all class teachers are aware of that. Support notes are then created and shared with all staff. Their PPRs are trolled in the start of S1, and any information related to an additional support need is removed and support folders are created. Some additional support needs are maybe identified during the pupil's secondary career, at which point the support notes would be created and the folders would be started. These folders are added to regularly by Support for Learning staff and class teachers. By the time pupils get to their start of their exam year, they're interviewed by the Support for Learning staff. By then, all supports that are already embedded into their normal classroom learning. At this point, parents are issued with a leaflet explaining the assessment process. Even pupils who don't use supports are offered them at this stage, including looked after children who are automatically considered to have additional support need.
I have no idea how all this works in my school, but I do know that all my teachers know I'm dyslexic and know how to support me. I will need support in my learning in their classrooms.
This is an example of a support note from my school that is available for all staff to see. It's also checked with the parents and with the pupils that they're happy this information is shared. The spreadsheet is then created and shared with all staff during the exam year. We had our assessment arrangement quality assured by the SQA last session. We're advised to make lots of changes, or some changes, to the way we arrange assessment arrangements across the school, passing more of the responsibility back to the class teachers. This did require a bit of a shift in mindset from our class teachers, and also a fair bit of CPD sessions led by myself and my team about how assessment arrangements are evidenced. Teachers would often say to me, "So-and-so really needs extra time in her exam. How do I evidence that?" And I would ask, "How do you know they need it?" "Well, she always needs the start of the next period to finish the question, or she has to finish her essays at home." That's the evidence. To make that into evidence suitable for the SQA, all you have to do is draw a line under where everyone else finished, or get them to use a different pen the next period. Mark before and after the line, time how much extra time they used, put all that together, and that's your evidence. So as long as that pupil has an identified support need and the evidence is there to say that it made a difference to their score, they can be applied for extra time for their exam for the SQA. The evidence has to be gathered annually, and it may change slightly as the pupils move through their levels.
My assessment arrangement changed going from Nat 5 to higher. In maths, for example, I only had extra time in Nat 5. My teacher became concerned that the amount of silly errors I was making when doing my practice higher questions in class. She suggested that I use digital readers to listen to the questions, and this resulted in fewer errors, and it was fair to assume that I was misreading the longer questions or forgetting to answer multi-part questions. My assessment arrangement for higher maths, although it would still write my answers on the paper copy because of the mathematical symbols, etc. My maths teacher then shared this information with my other teachers, and they all gave me practice questions using digital reader, which also made a difference in all other subjects.
This is an extract from our SQA Assessment Arrangement spreadsheet, which I'm proud to say was all organised and ready to go in March of this year, due to the hard work of the class teachers, PTs and my SFL team. It was updated after the prelim to take account of level changes and additional assessment arrangements that may have been put in place. We colour-coded the evidence presented in column O, the green being acceptable, and then it was verified by myself, which is amber, and a sample was verified by the SLT team and made green. This spreadsheet was then made available to all teaching staff. This sample has been ordered according to pupils' names, although they're not on the screen. So I can see all the exams that they're going to be sitting, the levels and the assessment arrangements each pupil has been granted for each subject. One of my responsibilities is to ensure that assessment arrangements are equitable across the curriculum areas. This doesn't mean that the assessment arrangements are necessarily the same for all subjects, and in fact the SQA would frown upon that. But that where a pupil has been given a digital paper for National 5 English but not for National 5 Drama, which also is a literacy heavy exam, I would then ask the drama department to reconsider and discuss with the pupil. Because pupils often submit work which is already word processed, it might not be obvious that this is a support strategy that they actually require, and evidence for spelling and grammar errors might need to be sought in handwritten notes in their class jotters to provide evidence for a digital paper in drama. Also, the amount of extra time awarded for each subject for a dyslexic student may likely be directly related to how much text they will be required to read during the exam.
Actually, I had the same assessment arrangements for all my higher exams, but I used them differently. I had digital papers for chemistry and physics, but would write some answers on paper and some digitally, and then submit both copies to be merged. But in PE, I would answer all my questions digitally, and in maths, I didn't use the digital paper, I just wrote it on the paper, and used the digital reader to read the questions to help me not misread the questions.
On the day of the SQA exam, or before the SQA exam, each pupil is provided with a timetable stating rooms and staff and their amended times. On the day of the exams, the technicians and myself are in very early in the morning, and we make sure all the exam papers are set up and all labelled correctly. We just ensure that everything is running smoothly, and if it isn't, the kids have no idea because it's sorted by 9 a.m. I appreciate that not all schools have the same technicians as we do. Ours are really good. But this is how it is organised in my school.
This happens at my school too. I get given an individual timetable with new times and rooms on it before the exam. Everything is all organised for me coming in to the exam on the day, and I'm directed to the machine with the paper already there on the screen.
This shows our assessment arrangements from National 5 Higher and Advanced Higher. I found this slide actually quite interesting to create because I hadn't looked at the statistics before. The percentage-wise, the assessment arrangements of digital papers are fairly consistent across Nat 5 and Higher, with a little drop-off at Advanced Higher. But being a small school, we have a small cohort of less than 50 Advanced Higher exams. So at Nat 5, 20% have an assessment arrangement, 8% of them being a digital paper. At Higher, 21% have assessment arrangements, with 10% being digital papers. At Advanced Higher, 4% have additional support arrangements, but there are no digital papers.
I suppose you must have kids like me that use digital papers for their hires but not for their Nat 5s.
Despite these quite healthy statistics, we still have a number of pupils that we think would benefit from assessment arrangements, and particularly digital papers, whom we cannot convince. These are some of the reasons why my pupils have given for not wanting to use digital papers.
Yep, Mum wanted me last year to use digital papers for my Nat 5s. I didn't want to. I don't know why I didn't want to. I didn't think I needed them. I think now it was stupid and I should have used them. I did finally use them at a higher level. I unfortunately didn't have to use them due to COVID, but it would have made it so much easier.
Having come from a primary school background, I've been quite frustrated with primary 7s who leave primary school very computer literate and yet go into S1 and then never use ICT to support their learning. However, now having moved into the secondary sector, I suddenly found myself faced with hormonally charged, stroppy teenagers and quickly realised that I wasn't making any of them comply through force. Most of these issues can be overcome, but the biggest hurdle is them feeling confident about using the ICT. So how can we as teachers support youngsters to be confident using ICT more generally? And it needs to happen well before S4. In my opinion, the earlier you start, the better. Share your use of ICT with your youngsters. I don't know about you guys, but I certainly don't ever handwrite things. Create opportunities for using ICT for writing, even sending emails, writing texts, and start improving their typing skills early on. I consider good typing skills to be a life requirement for all youngsters, but especially those with literacy difficulties. I would be shot down in flames by my primary teaching colleagues, but in my opinion, it's more important than handwriting and spelling. There are many typing courses available, but BBC Dance Mat's my favourite for primary pupils and Doorway Online for upper primary and into secondary age. Both are free to use, free to download at home. I don't insist they're able to touch type, although I now regret not learning myself, but having good keyboard skill goes a long way to convincing them that digital resources can have a positive impact on their learning.
I realised in P4 my typing speed wasn't great and put some effort into learning how to type better. I learned some of the other supports available in Word, etc. By P7 I was the go-to man for all computer related stuff for the staff, as well as the pupils. My primary school head teacher made me train up a P6 before I left to set up their digital stuff in the hall for assemblies, etc. I still can't touch type, but the more I used keyboard, the quicker I got, and I can now type quicker than I can handwrite.
There are lots of universal supports built into Word. Most people are now on Windows 10 at least, or through Office 365. The built-in supports for Word are always improving and now include a speaking spell checker and text-to-speech. All school computers are built with Word Talk and the Scottish Voices, and they are still free to download for home devices. Unfortunately, the speech-to-text recognition is still not great within Word.
One of the benefits of lockdown is that all our work has been provided digitally, which is great, and I have gotten to the grips of the Immersive Reader through Glow. I am hoping that other dyslexic learners have also found this a benefit, and that teachers keep their digital skills and continue to provide more digital work in the classroom.
We're in the process of moving over from Natural Reader to Natural Reader from Ivona in schools right at the moment as our main text-to-speech facility, but many pupils are benefiting from the Immersive Reader, which is built into Office 365 suite, accessed through Glow. The advantage to these programmes is that they're able to read PDFs and web pages too. It doesn't really matter what software you use, it's getting the pupils to appreciate the benefits of it that's important. So how can we use these? As a class teacher, most of my worksheets, etc., were created and then printed off using Word. It takes minimal effort and adaptations to make these worksheets digitally editable. They can be shared through Glow or the server for those pupils who would benefit, and pupils can use their own earphones.
I have my earphones with me at all times, usually hanging out at the top of my collar or my shirt, much to my mum's disgust. So plugging them into the laptop to use text-to-speech requires no effort from me, and I prefer to use my own rather than the school's big bulky headphones.
These are some examples of digital worksheets where I've added text boxes to make them editable. There's a regular comprehension sheet, so it's printed off and filled in by everybody else in the class and provided digitally for those that require it. The newspaper template is similar, be printed off and handwritten by most of the class, and others would then use it on digitally and print it off afterwards.
Some of my teachers are very, very good at providing me with digital formats, both in primary school and secondary school, but other teachers are not as good. Some made me feel like I was being a nuisance, and one maths teacher even made fun of my spelling. My mum didn't miss him at parents' night. I didn't always have the confidence to ask my teacher, so sometimes I just struggled as best as I could. I was lucky because I always had good mates in my class and understood my difficulties and would help me out. I always wanted to have the confidence to go and talk to the teacher, but never came out. I want to make sure that people with additional support needs have always got a voice in the school and have always had the confidence to demand in their own needs and are met without the shame or embarrassment.
Call Scotland's Books for All website continues to be a great resource for teachers to access digital books and workbooks. Again, increasing the pupils' use of ICT to support their own learning independently. It comes back to the first slide by Call. They might not be able to read chapter 2 of The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas, but sent home with a digital copy, they can listen to it and complete the task in class the next day like everyone else. Using digital textbooks is a great training ground in preparation for digital exams later on in school. Increasingly, audiobooks are being used in school. Depending on the licence, why not offer it to all pupils who want to try it? I myself never find the time to read a book, but I enjoy listening to one while I walk the dog every day. So on here is a hyperlink to an audio book. This is The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas. So you could organise to send this home digitally with pupils who struggle to read the text. The advantage to audiobooks is they're actually an actor's voice that tells a story.
In school, they had talked about their fathers one day, and Carl had said that his father was a greengrocer, which Bruno knew to be true because he ran the greengrocer's shop in the centre of town. And Daniel had said that his father was a teacher, which Bruno knew to be true because he taught the big boys, who it was always wise to steer clear of.
So this would be an advantage to send home with youngsters who struggle to read the written word. They could still be independent and listen to the chapter, ready for their work the next day in school. So alternatively, you can have a digital copy of the book to send home with young people. You have to make sure that you get an unabridged version, which is exactly the same as the text. And for this, your young person would have to have a digital reader.
I wondered whether there were any spare tyres around. Bruno continued, from one of the jeeps perhaps, or a truck, one that you're not using.
Well, the advantage of this, if you've got they can just highlight one or two words that they're stuck on. Here are some templates that I've created in digital formats. So in here, the youngster using IT would just type in their answers, and they've got the template there for a newspaper. We print that off when they're finished. Workbooks are also available from the Books for All website. So these are exactly the same as the books in school, but the young person can use a digital reader to read the questions out loud.
A Belmont with a swimming pool.
And then they can type in their answers. Unfortunately, it doesn't mark it for you. And that's it.
One of my most hated times of primary school is the run up to Burns, when we all had a Scottish poem to recite. I found the Scots language impossible to read, so how was I to learn it? In P7, I did the same poem as my brother did the year prior, and he recorded himself and gave it to me to help me learn it. I won that recital competition for my class that year.
Here are some examples of an unabridged PDF novel and a maths workbook, both available from the Books for all print disabled youngsters, which includes dyslexic pupils. There are other additional supports which are licensed, which can be used to support young people in classes. Co-writer and inspiration are both kind of being superseded by Clicker and Docs Plus, but still used in some authorities. It is unlikely that a pupil still requiring this level of literacy support in S4 would be sitting SQA exams, but these resources are permissible by the SQA as assessment arrangements. You can also do audio responses. I haven't had experience of using this as an assessment arrangement so far, but for young people with complex needs or physical disabilities, they can complete their exams using audio responses or speech-to-text software such as Dragon. I find that Siri on the iPad for normal classroom use is one of the most successful mainstream speech-to-text facilities to use. So in summary, teachers need to appreciate that it's our children's right to have reasonable adjustments made to their curriculum and their assessments. Young people need to know what assessment arrangements are available to them and which are most suitable for their learning. They need to be able to be confident using the technology as a support. Assessment arrangements should always reflect their normal learning practices, so we need to start as soon as we can. and our young people are the biggest pioneers for change. Thank you very much for listening.